Oh, yes, they do. But so does Minty. Minty's been a good little old pickup truck. I got this from Karsten up in North Dakota, a friend. Bought it from him, and then me and Mike drove this old girl from North Dakota to Vegas. And on that trip, we stopped and visited a whole bunch of boneyards and kind of little personal collections that we knew about. That's actually an old YouTube video. I think it's like at least 2 years ago. But I had sold this truck to a friend of mine, and I have just acquired it back. Yeah. So, problems though. Some of the engines in the bed. I almost said trunk because I'm so used to having cars. But I'm actually going to want to use this as my tow vehicle for the race car. Yeah, so even though the General is awesome pulling the race car trailer, because you come rolling into the racetrack with a race car behind a General Lee, you get thumbs. Everybody just like drops what they're doing and it's just kind of like... But it's not practical. It's cool, but it's not practical. I can't put anything in it. I can't put my my car lift. I can't put a lot of tools or spare parts. I can't put hardly anything in it. So Minty, being a long bed, I can haul everything I need to in this. But it ain't gonna do a whole lot of hauling right now, because the reason I had acquired this truck back is after 2 years of driving it, that my buddy had it, the engine in Minty had went. So, but it didn't like go full on. It just kind of did a little damage to the cylinder heads. We got one burnt valve, and then we got 3 sunk valves. And so it was on 5 cylinders, and he drove it like that for 2 months. Yes, he drove it on 5 cylinders for 2 months because it was his only vehicle. But Minty has had a lot of upgrades since I have had it. Look out, Sam. Minty has since got new carpet that Frankie had put in it, got new seat upholstery. Oh, here's a cam that's gonna go in this old girl. See, I'm still waiting for parts. The parts are supposed to show up today from FedEx. So I'm expecting to see a big old white truck with FedEx on the side bringing me all my Christmas presents early. So, but so far I've got the comp cam, which is just a little kind of RV cam, nothing big. I'll tell you about it later. I got my head gaskets. Okay, yeah, so far I just got the cam and the head gaskets. But since I had owned it, Frankie had put a Stealth intake manifold on it. He got a Holley carburetor. He put a brand new alternator on it. He put a new aluminum radiator on it. He put the bitchin' dual exhaust out the side, and a couple other little odds and end things. But I have just ordered all the parts, like I said, and we got it tore down to the short block. Let me go ahead and show you. I originally wasn't going to video this because I just need to get it done, but I kind of like Minty, and I'm sure you guys like trucks too. So I had cleaned up the short block, cleaned up the deck, cleaned up the pistons. I mean, there was like 1/8 of an inch of carbon on top of the piston, so that's all cleaned up now. It had good oil pressure, and the cylinder walls are good enough. So I'm just redoing the top end on it, just because I don't really feel like putting a big block in it right now. And actually, I thought about putting my big block in it, but if I did that, the options for overdrive transmissions becomes very slim. So by leaving it a small block, I can just go down to the junkyard and buy a 518 and drop it right in there. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. Leave it small block, and if for some reason I have to rebuild this engine down the road, I'm just gonna make it a 408 stroker and overdrive transmission, fuel injection, and that's it. I am gonna put vintage air on this thing too, because the fiance is gonna have to ride in this thing, and she don't like to sweat at all. So I went ahead and did all this. He didn't need to see all that. It was kind of boring. And I had my buddy Vlad with Invincible Machines. He was over here one day, so he tore the whole top end apart for me. And again, that was at the time we weren't really gonna video anything. So now we're videoing, so I'm getting you caught up to speed. Now you're up to speed. Now we're right here. So I got Derek with me, and until the big white Santa Claus shows up, we're just gonna pull the oil pan off, because it had good oil pressure, but I went ahead and bought a brand new oil pump, so we're gonna put that on. I got a new oil pan gasket. I got aluminum heads for it. So I'm not putting these heads back on because they're not worth rebuilding. I bought Jegs hooked me up, which I'll talk about Jegs in a second. I got a set of aluminum heads for it that will up the compression and flow slightly better CFM. So I'll get more power out of it, more compression, and with the RV cam, that's really what I'm looking for out of this truck, is just pulling power. So compression, cam, and we got the dual plane intake, small carburetor. I think that's just a 570. I might even just put my 650 on it, but it should be most betters. All right, well, I'm gonna get to work. Right there, under the body mount right here. Actually, come back a little. And, yeah. Yes, hi Sam. Hey, Sam, can you give me a little space? Not take more away. All right, it's the next day. So I had to go out and run errands and do customer car stuff and everything. So luckily, Derek and Vlad, which isn't here right now, but Vlad with Invincible Machines, he has a YouTube channel. You should follow him. He's got some interesting stuff. Plus he's got some Mopar stuff too. I know you guys like Mopar stuff. If you're watching me, you obviously like Mopar stuff, but I'm not Mopar only, but I kind of lean more towards it. But yesterday, since I was gone most of the time, I had Derek cleaning up the engine and Vlad. So they cleaned up the engine, they dropped the oil pan, they cleaned up the oil pan rails and got everything nice and pretty again so we can just start assembling. And because yesterday none of my parts showed up. Nothing showed up yet because of all the weather and stuff back east. There were some delays, but luckily Santa Claus in a big old white truck with FedEx on the side showed up today and delivered the goods. So now we can assemble the engine. And as I said yesterday, Derek got all that stuff cleaned up, so I went ahead and painted it. We spent some time, since we had to wait on parts, we went ahead and decided, well, since we're waiting, we might as well make stuff look pretty. So now everything's prettier looking, and Derek's working on the fan and the pulley and some little brackets and miscellaneous stuff, and Sammy's chasing the glare on the light, or on the camera. So anyways, back to the goods. Out with the old junky crap heads, in with the new aluminum, higher compression aluminum heads. So yes, these are the Chinese aluminum heads, but after looking at them, when they showed up, when I ordered them, I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to port these things, make them a little better. But actually, out of the box, they look pretty good. They look just as good as the L-Brox. They're probably even a little better. Like, you feel down the throat, and they actually have a nice arch on the low side. Same with the exhaust side. We got a smaller combustion chamber, so that'll up this engine up from, you know, the 8-to-1 to like at least hopefully 9-to-1. So I'm actually happy with these heads. And yes, I know they have Chinese valves and Chinese springs on them, but the cam that we chose is not a super big cam. It's actually more of like a low end, just kind of a grunt cam. It's actually only 470 lift, so it's not even going to stress those Chinese springs. And it's only 213, 220 duration, 470 lift with a 110 lobe separation, so it's really not that big. I just wanted a little bit more pulling power for upgrades in that power range and stuff like that. We got our YN Stealth aluminum intake manifold, dual plane. We got a Brawler 650 carburetor. Got all my gaskets, everything you need to do. And since we got the oil pan off, I'm gonna go ahead and put a rear main seal in it because it's right there, and you should do it. Yes, Anthony, I'm talking to you. That's a kick to the shorts, huh? We got some Cometic head gaskets. So I went ahead and sprung for the good ones. You know, I try not to cheap out on head gaskets because, yeah, you're gonna pay double the price, if not triple, but at least you don't have to go back and fix it. So we got head gaskets, cam. I got a mini starter for it. We got a new fuel pump. I got a high volume oil pump, new plug wires, all the gaskets I need. I went ahead and got a new water pump. We got all my oil. We got our new spark plugs and Mopar oil filter. Yeah. So enough of the chit chat. We need to start assembling this thing because I'm hoping tomorrow I'm racing. That car is racing tomorrow, and I want to use this to pull it. So I can hopefully try and get this done today so I can use this to pull the race car. Race, happy, good day. All right. Ready, Derek?
Yeah.
Sling some parts on this thing. All right, welcome to the bottom side of Minty. Right now, my objective is to go ahead and pull this rear main cap because I think the rear main seal was leaking because there was oil coming out of the bell housing. Now that could have been the oil pan gasket, but since I'm here and the oil pan's off of this thing, I'm gonna go ahead and replace that rear main seal. It's right there, might as well just do it, be done with it and over with it. So, 2 bolts off, and there's 2 half seals. I gotta kind of force the other one over the crank and down so I can get it out, and I'll have to slip it back in the other same way it came back out. So, I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now, pull that rear cap off. Oh, I got it. Oh, the crank looks good. Oh, I don't think it was leaking that bad. Fuck, the rear main is dry. Well, we'll go ahead and replace it anyway. How's the bearing look on this thing? Ooh, I don't see no copper. That's a good time. Oh yeah, we'll go ahead and put that rear seal and this thing will be done with it. Oh, it still has the rope seal on it. Look, that's rope. All right, well, let's go ahead and do this. All right, so I think all of my leak was coming from this rear main, or from the oil pan seal, because this thing is like plastic. It's so freaking hard. Yeah, it's supposed to be like rubber, but it just split like plastic. So that's junk. Ooh, is that another one of those bombers coming? Let's see. Change of plans. We're just gonna yank the engine out and put it on the stand because I've pretty much got the whole engine tore apart anyway, and it's it might as well just clean the block up, and it'd be easier to do the rear seal. So yeah, should have just done this in the first place. We're just gonna yank the freaking engine out, put it on the stand, put it together, and then put it back in the truck. That sounds more simple, more betters, more easier. All right, let's yank it out, Derek. Well, here we now be in the engine room. Here's Minty's 360, which I do have to tell you, it is not numbers matching. That's originally a 318 truck. This is a 360. 360. But I'm thinking I probably need to take this to the machine shop just to get all the junk out of it. Just hot tank it. This thing is loaded with like, stop leak. So I don't know, maybe actually I'll try and pressure wash most of that out, but this thing is just loaded with stop leak. So I don't want to just slap it together. And it's actually a good thing I pulled this engine out of the truck, because you can't see it now, but I believe, yes, it was this freeze plug. There must have been a small pinhole in it because it was loaded with rust, and I spent some time cleaning the block up. So that freeze plug was no buenos. That thing was gonna leak anytime soon. So, actually glad we just yanked it out, fix it right, and it doesn't have that much of a ridge, so I think I'm just gonna dingle ball it. I got some brand new piston rings, I got some bearings, got new freeze plugs. We're gonna do just an old backyard rebuild. If I can clean the inside of the block up pretty good. I think I can. I think it'll be all right. So I'm gonna go ahead and rip the short block apart, which basically is getting all the crank rods and pistons out, and get this thing all cleaned up. I still got a couple freeze plugs in the back I gotta pull out, a couple of plugs themselves. Same thing in the front, these 2 freeze plugs. So I'm gonna finish that and get this thing all yanked apart. So next time you see this thing, it'll be a bare block. And then I can start putting it together after I clean it up. All right, to it. Changed my mind again. Actually gonna go farther on this than I really wanted to. When I took this engine apart, or when I dropped the oil pan the first time, we found a bunch of what looked like bearing material inside the pan. And actually it wasn't bearing material, it was like just chunks of bearing. We weren't quite sure where it came from because The rod bearings are all there, except for some bearings have got some copper to them, but that's not going to leave huge chunks. That's just going to leave small fragments. And then looking farther into it, there's actually one, that bearing right there is missing. So all the rest of them here, except for that one. So, and with the ridge in the cylinders and with that bearing gone and all the junk inside the block from stop leak, we're gonna get bigger pistons. So we're gonna go 40 over, flat top, 2 valve relief, hyper pistons that have coated skirts, and then we're gonna go ahead and just put new cam bearings in it, hot tank, bore, deck, hone, all that stuff. So way more in depth than I wanted to, but this will actually be a really good engine afterwards. So make more compression with better pistons, and yeah, better compression, bigger piston, bigger jugs, always good. Jugs. All right, well, I'm gonna get this loaded in the trunk of the General and hit it. Someone's calling me, actually. Oh, it's Derek. All right. Loaded. Time to go to the machine shop. All right, it's been a little while since you've seen me pull the engine out of Minty. They all have patina look to them, so I get confused sometimes. But it has been at least 2 weeks since they pulled the engine out of Minty. Now, guess what? There's still no engine in it, because it is in fact in the back getting a full rebuild. All the machine work is done. I've done a little bit of porting work to the oiling system, so I drilled out some galleys. Oh yeah, that's General Mayhem, the Mayhem. So yeah, actually, yeah, Mayhem's at my house. It's getting a little bit of stuff done. So I've drilled out the main oil galleys to a 1/2 inch. I'm doing the crossover tube on the valley lifters. Just a couple of oiling mods that a lot of the racing guys do to high RPM 360s and small block LA engines. And this is Minty's engine right here. So this is a 360 that came out of it. The crank is cut and polished. I got everything new for it. I got brand new aluminum heads. I got cam. I got everything. The only thing I'm lacking right now is, unfortunately, I cannot find the piston rings. So I'm thinking maybe they got left at the machine shop, because the pistons are right here. Look at these bad boys. See, we got some 40 over flat top, 2 valve relief, coated skirted pistons. These are from Sealed Power. Again, this is not a full race motor, but with those pistons and those heads, Minty right here should be like 10.5 to 1 compression, which is far better than the 8.5 to 1 compression that it was before. So it'll have some grunt behind it. And then with the little comp cam I have for it, it's just a little 213, 219 duration cam with like 470 lift. But those cylinder heads, those flow pretty good. For a Chinese head, those are pretty good. So I'm not gonna knock that. So small cam, decent heads, 10 to 1 compression. This should be a good little thumper motor from Minty. I mean, it's all for like grunt pulling power. And we have the dual plane stealth intake. So yeah, low end grunt torquing pulley power. But whenever you gain torque, you gain horsepower. So Minty should actually run pretty good. I would say this thing in Minty probably run like low 13s, which should be pretty good. I'm actually like thinking it really will do that. But I'm gonna go ahead and set this up on a time lapse, and probably the only thing I'm gonna get done to it today is crankshaft, camshaft, maybe a few tidbit things. There's not a whole lot I can do to it because I don't have the freaking piston rings. So, getting on it. just bolted on 5 horsepower. Got the engine all painted, clear coated, it's all pretty looking. I got my piston rings back. So, and I've been sizing them. The only thing I've really been having to do is cut about 2/1000ths off the oil ring. Not a big deal, but I don't know. The compression ring, I've been setting them at 18, so it should be a nice tight motor. Not really building it for nitrous or anything, so tight is good. The bare minimum would be 16,000, so I just opened them up to 18, and I got 20 on the oil ring. So I'm just kind of doing that right now. It's kind of a long, boring process. So each hole, have to size it, test the ring in there, and then install them on the piston rings. Actually a good looking piston. You know, for a hyper piston, not too bad. So, budget motor, should make bunches of power. Not really, like 400 maybe. So I'm hoping I can get the short block done. Maybe later today get the cylinder heads on, but I've got to go over to the shop and finish working on the race car. I got brand new tires. So I actually haven't even had brand new tires in that modified before. Oh, I lied. I had brand new tires in the Dual and Desert. So anyways, new tires, gotta do that later. Then I'll get back on this. So for right now, I'll just time lapse doing all my gapping, get pistons and rods in, and getting Minty closer to driving. Actually should be pretty good. Like, should be like 375 horse. Yeah, I'm just gonna say 375. I don't want to say the 400 number because guys might be like, no, that's wrong. But you know, it should be decent cylinder heads, 10-to-1 compression, small cam, intake. Actually, it's not 360 anymore. It's a 40 over 360. So what is that, like? Probably around like 375, 380 or something like that. I'll do the math later. Right now, I just need to get to work. So, on it. All right, one thing I probably should note is how I'm doing the piston ring gap. I realize some people don't know how to do this, and a lot of you guys already do. But what I do with the piston ring gap, take the piston ring, I shove it halfway down the hole with the piston, you know, with no rings on it, shove it halfway down the hole, and then I take my feeler gauge, which is, hang on a second, I'm just doing this on the fly here. Take my feeler gauge and I feel the gap in between the piston rings. So I wanted 18 and 20, and if it's not that big, what I do is I bring the piston ring over here, and of course it's horseshoe shape, shove it on there, hits the 2 pins, closes the gap, and then I just go do 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 do. So then pop it out, check it again. If it's good, then I go ahead and assemble, put all the piston rings on the pistons. What I just did right here is I checked my bearing clearance. So what I do is I take my mic, stick it on the connecting rod or the rod journal, and it's really tight right there. So then that is my gap for the rod journal. Then what I did is I took a rod, put a bearing in it, torqued it, and I stick my what the hell is this thing called, a bore scope? I don't know, forgot. Anyways, stick this in there, and that'll give me, and I zero out the gauge once I get it set to the correct, because you know it's gonna walk around a little, so you gotta get it to where it's at the shorter or the smallest gap, or well, the smallest number you can get is what your actual gap is, because if you go this way it opens up, if you go that way it opens up. So you get the smallest number and then you set it to 0, bring it over here, and then I set that in there, and the difference will show on the dial. So right now I have 2/1000 bearing clearance, which perfect, I'll roll with that. So now that I know my bearing clearances are good, I know my piston ring gaps are good, I can go ahead and take all these, throw them in there, and I will have a complete short block. All right, welcome to the next day. Well, I got my oil pump on, and I got to thinking, you know, because I just have the truck oil pan for this thing, which is just a big bathtub. There's no windage tray, there's no baffling, there's no nothing inside that thing. And I'm not exactly the nicest person to engines, and so I kind of like RPM and holding it there for a while. So I was like, and even though this is my truck motor, I know myself, and I'm gonna see some RPM. So I dug out this old windage tray that was sitting off of my junk pile. I need to clean it up a little bit, but I went ahead and dusted it off so it's not dirty, it's just a little rusty. I want to put this guy right, yeah, but my main studs, or my main bolts, have no provisions to mount that. So what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be welding some bolts. Just going to TIG weld. I'm going to roll this engine over to my TIG welder. I'm going to weld these guys right there. There, and there. That way I can be able to mount that guy to the engine. So, nothing else to do but just to do it. I gotta clean these up too. They're pretty dirty. Alright, on it. Oh, I forgot another thing I gotta do. I gotta knock in the freeze plugs in the back of the block because I can't get those in while it's on the engine stand. So while it's just sitting here dangling in the air, I'll go ahead and knock those rear plugs in. Then I think we're ready to go in. Yeah, another thing you're gonna hate me for is I took the distributor apart, took the guts out of it, and I welded up half the slot for the centrifugal advance. So that way I can run more initial timing without having to worry about having too much timing on the top end. That way I get more low end grunt, responds faster, mo bettas. So, and I changed the spring, so I recurved it and limited the throw on it, which I do that to pretty much every car because it's so dumb to have like 8 degrees of idle timing and then have it max out at like 32 on the top. It doesn't need that much advance. So that's done. What else did I do? Yeah, I don't remember. Just gonna get it in. It's Minty day, or well, Minty morning, I should say. Just gonna get the engine set in the truck this morning, get it all bolted up, transmission, motor mounts, maybe get the exhaust manifolds on it, and then probably call it a day, because I got a lot of work to do today. So, plus I don't want to do it in the sun. So it's gonna be like 98 degrees today, which is cool compared to what it will be in the summertime. And I haven't cut all this nappy hair off yet, so I'm gonna do that today because now that it's summertime, this gots to go. All right, so we're gonna set this on time lapse and have at it. Oh, just a few things left in the bed of Minty, because it is almost a driver. Just got a few things left to do. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful now? The best thing I like, but look how tiny the engine looks in this engine bay. It's like the size of my hand compared to the engine bay. Man, so much workspace. You could actually like sit in the inner wheel wells and just work on this thing. It's actually comfortable to work on. before I could fire it, a few things obviously. We're missing the thermostat housing, the thermostat, radiator hoses, radiator, and that's pretty much it. Oh, I'm waiting on this nipple here so that way I can finish my bypass hose. But I figured this morning is a good time for me to go ahead and get my tranny cooler mounted. So this guy is going to go right behind the grill. I'll have to pull the tranny lines out, cut them. I'll re-flare them so that way I can just put a bubble flare on it and use hose clamps. And that'll attach to my tranny cooler because Minty is going to be a tow vehicle. So, got all my pipe flaring tools out and already done used them. That's right. Didn't film it, but I'll show you the aftermath. Ooh, those are pretty. All right, so Minty is actually getting really close. That's cool too. I got the tranny cooler installed. I made the hard lines for it, which is actually right there. Let me get a better view of that real quick. Oh yeah, look at that gold air cleaner. Isn't the Moroso air cleaner just totally set that off? Just the glare from the vintage gold Moroso air cleaner. All right, this is actually a Ford cooler. I didn't even notice that until I saw the Ford emblem on it. So sorry, Minty, but it'll work. So I got the hard lines done. Those are run. I pulled the tranny lines out, cleaned them up, re-flared them so I can just use these as a coupler there. Got my heater hoses on. What's next? Next is, I still don't have my nipple that goes right there. It might be in the mailbox, so I'll have to go check. So I think I can just go ahead and get the radiator in it. Get my radiator hoses on it. I'm missing my clamp for the throttle linkage, so I gotta find that. I have no idea where it went. I'm not the one that took the truck apart. I just pulled the engine out of it. Radiator, shroud, hoses, battery, and cables. So that's what's gonna happen now. I'm gonna go ahead and get on that. Minty's alive! Minty just wouldn't cooperate. So after breaking in the cam and backing down the idle, the engine started to get that good old tick, 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 tick. Well, after pulling a valve cover off, thinking there's no way in hell the cam went flat that already. There's no way in hell it did that. Did everything proper, RPM range, coolant temp was good. Not a chance in hell that the cam went flat. So after further inspection, pulling the valve cover, I find, see, no, this one's pumped up, pumped up, pumped up, pumped up, pumped up, pumped up, pumped up. You'll notice I skipped that one because that lifter is completely dead. That lifter has no pump up to it. And you know why? Because China. Cheap Chinese junk lifters. And that's comp. Those are comp cam with comp lifters. But they probably bought all those lifters in bulk from China and put them in their comp box and sell them to you guys. So now I'm having to go back. Now I'm having to pull the intake off, change all that stuff, and I'm not even going to bother putting hydraulics back in it because I'm over it. I'm done. I was going to put hydraulics in it to save a few bucks and reuse the factory rockers and the push rods and all that. I'm over it. So now I'm putting a solid lifters on this hydraulic cam, and I'm just going to have to put adjustable rockers and the correct length push rods on it. So it's just more money and time I got to put into the engine. All right, well, so I'm gonna go ahead and change this. We're just gonna time lapse tearing this down. I gotta pull the intake off, pull all the valve train out. Then I can push stuff in I have Elgin lifters I'm gonna put in it, which, yeah, they're made here, but they're a solid lifter. Like, I mean, solid chunk of lifter. So I kind of wish they were a little lighter, but this is not a high RPM race motor. Anyway, this engine will probably only be seeing 5,500 tops. Oh, hey, Gigi. Shop kitty. Always has to get attention and hang out on the cars. Which I'm glad I don't have any shiny painted cars, because I would be booting that kitty out of here. Yes, I see you. It is kind of hard not to like him though. All right, Gigi, I gotta get to work. Oh, okay. This is my parrot. All right, well, I'm gonna put this thing on time lapse and go ahead and rip this thing apart. Gigi. Well, I guess it was my fault. I don't know. I normally break in flat tappet cams, break in oil, hold the RPM up to around 2 to 2,500 RPM for 15 minutes. I guess I held it at 2,000 RPM way too long. I held it at 2,000 for the majority of the time, just setting the idle screw on the carburetor, and I don't know. I'm just not even going to run hydraulic or flat tappet cams ever again. Just don't need them. That is just freaking stupid. And I've broken several flat tappet cams before. I've never had an issue. Ugh. Until now. And it's not worth having again, so just won't use it again. Alright, well, now all of this has to come apart so I can fix this and clean it and all the fun stuff. See the smile on my face? Alright, well, I'm gonna do this. You'll see it when the engine's all tore apart. I don't know if you noticed, but I was actually trying to stay all upbeat about it, but I really can't. Ha! Turns out it wasn't my fault that the cam went flat. Actually, the cam didn't go flat. It was the lifters that went flat because they're cheap Chinese garbage. A lot of the cam manufacturers are now just buying hydraulic flat tappet lifters from China, which they do not have the hardness metal that lifters require, so garbage. Now I gotta yank the engine out, which I've had Derek here do everything for me. Say hi, Derek.
What's up?
All right, so Derek's been getting everything off the engine and getting it ready to yank out. It's now ready to yank out. I'm busy working on Mayhem over there, so I'm gonna help Derek yank the engine out. We're gonna get it on a stand, so then I can tear Minty's engine back apart because it had so much metal go through it. Actually, I don't know if I showed you the lifter or not, but let me go ahead and show you this lifter right here. This is amazing, actually, in a bad way. Let's see. Which one is, oh yeah, here we go. So the reason that lifter wouldn't pump up because there's a hole in it. That's not supposed to be there. This lifter is like butter. It's garbage. I saved it because I can show people how much garbage it is. But there was like 2 or 3 lifters that wore away that much. So that is a lot of metal that just ran through this brand new engine. So gonna yank the engine out, tear it apart, go through it. If it needs a new oil pump, I'll put a new oil pump in it. I need to pop all the caps on the bearings, make sure the bearings are okay, and basically use a whole lot of gasoline to flush this engine out, because that is a lot of metal that just ran through this thing. That sucks. But oh well. Yank it out, fix it, and we're gonna be putting it back together with a roller cam this time. No more flat tappet shit for me anymore. I have never flattened out a cam. Actually, I take that back. This cam hasn't flattened out. The lifters schmelted like butter. So I have never schmelted lifters before, and I don't want to do it again. I saved myself, about $1,000 not putting a roller cam in it, but then having to go through all this shit was not worth $1,000. I wish I would have just put a roller cam in it from the beginning. All right, well, yank it out and fix it. In this box is gold. This is American-made gold right here. To me anyways, because then that box is real Crane 20-year-old hydraulic flat tappet lifters for a Mopar. I found these at the local speed shop. They were under the counter. They've been in that speed shop for over 20 years. Look, there's the date. 2000. July 28th of 2000 is the date that these lifters were made. So at that time, there were no China lifters. So I know I said I wasn't going to reuse a flat tappet cam, but I don't know. I can trust these lifters, and I can trust Howard cams. So we got a new cam, we got new lifters, we got all new bearings, because Minty is in need of bearings and a whole new set of lifters. Yep. One got scarred, another one got wore away, and a couple of the rod and crank bearings, most of them were fine. But then there was a few that did get a groove in them because something went through it. Metal, obviously. I took the oil pump apart. Here we go. Oh, that's not the oil pump. Here we go. Here's the oil pump. So I took the oil pump apart and I checked out inside of it. I don't see any grooves inside of it. There's a couple little scars, but nothing that'll affect anything. So at least the oil pump I can reuse. And I can put Minty's engine back together yet again on the engine stand yet again because of crappy overseas lifters. They schmelted like butter. This engine's actually been sitting here for 2 months now because I've been so busy on General Mayhem, and now Smurf is under the wrench. So, but it's getting a bunch of upgrades. So, actually, you know what? I'll show you. Yep. See? Looks the same, right? Looks the same. Looks the same. Nothing really changed. It's all about the same, right? Then all of a sudden, bam! Yeah. I likes horsepowers and I likes tunnel rams. So, between Smurf and finishing General Mayhem, I had to put Minty on the back burner. So, but I will be getting back on it because I need to get that truck done and running. So, this is probably where I'm going to end this episode right now because there's a whole lot of footage and a whole lot of time, and it's going to take me a little bit of time to put this engine back together and get it ready to go back in the truck. So, next time you see Minty, it will be running and we'll be laying tire because I did get a bigger cam for it this time. I kind of was in like the screw it mode, and I went with a little bit bigger cam. Not too much bigger, but at least I'll get a little bit of the muscle car rumble. So, alright guys, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Poor Minty. It's not your fault.